Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of moral lessons from the Quran. We have been continuing this small course, this mini course in this month of Ramadan, and the purpose is to connect ourselves to the Holy Quran because this holy month actually. The fasting that is observed during this holy month is a reminder and is an expression of the fact that it was in this month that the Quran began to be revealed. And as a result of this, fasting was made incumbent in this month. So the Quran and Ramadan, they have a very deep connection. And obviously, this connection is meant to stay forever. But this is like a workshop, a 30-day workshop that is conducted every year so that its effects can carry on for the rest of the 11 months. So the real test of fasting, or the real consequence of fasting, or the real influence that we might, the benefits that we might gain from fasting are the ones that we would experience once this month has passed away or is gone. So let's do hope that we are able to do the very best in these this last week and able to reap the blessings of Ramadan by connecting ourselves to the Almighty through His Word, which is the Quran. So the passage that I have selected today for our discussion and reading is, these are actually verses 70 to 73 from Surah Ahzab, which is the 73rd Surah of the Quran, the 33rd Surah of the Quran. And we know that this was a Surah in which the hypocrites had taken upon themselves to make this one last-ditch effort to bring down the household of the Prophet by bringing it into moral disrepute. And when they saw that there was nothing could be done in order to stop the religion from spreading, and even battles and force could not stop it. So what they did was they went upon this besmearing campaign of the wives of the Prophet. So these are actually near the ending verses of the surah. And right before this, what is actually said is, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu la takunu kallazina azaw Musa. So exactly with the same intent, believers, Muslims, followers of Prophet Muhammad are being told that never be like those who ended up, of course referring to Israelites, in harassing Moses, in really putting him in a tight spot, so to speak. And we know how the Israelites behaved with Moses throughout his own lifetime. And as a result, of course, they were also debarred from entering the land of Palestine because of their own cowardliness. And ultimately, it was much later that Palestine came into their possession. So these are the ending verses, and they are cautioning and prodding Muslims that they should not behave with their prophet the way the Israelites behaved with their prophet. And for this, the most important thing which is mentioned here is that have to be straight, they have to speak the truth, and they have to come out with what their heart is, and not hide emotions of ill intent like these hypocrites and how these Israelites actually behaved with Prophet Moses. So from here on, we read these verses of the Quran and their translation. So, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu attaqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida yuslih lakum a'malakum wa yaghfir lakum zunubakum wa man yuti'illaha wa rasulahu faqad faza fawzan azima. إنا عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض والجبال فأبين أن يحملنها وأشفقن منها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان ظلوما جهولا ليعذب الله المنافقين والمنافقات والمشركين والمشركات ويتوب الله على المؤمنين والمؤمنات وكان الله غفورا رحيما. Believers, fear God and speak the truth. God will set right your deeds and forgive your sins. And those who will continue to obey God and His Messenger have attained great success. We offered our trust to the heavens, the earth, and the mountains, but they refused to bear it and fear it, and man undertook to bear it. Indeed, he is unjust and one who is overcome by emotions. So that God punished the hypocrites and the idolaters, both men and women, and shower his mercy on believing men and women. And God is forgiving and merciful. So you can see that this passage is actually divided into two paragraphs, and the first paragraph basically is beckoning Muslims to behave in a way which is absolutely different from the ones which the hypocrites had taken up. And it is said that Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida yuslih lakum a'malakum wa yaghfir lakum dhunubakum wa man yuti'illaha wa rasulahu faqad faza fawzan azima. So they are told that unlike these hypocrites that they who have started this campaign of besmearing and were hiding in the ranks of Muslims, posing to be Muslims, whereas they are they are full of venom for the Prophet and for the companions of the Prophet. So on the contrary, Muslims are being told, Kulu qawlan sadida, that speak the truth and do not distort your words, do not distort your intentions, do not lie and do not implicate others with any falsehood. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu taqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida. And before even this is said, the words are that you fear God, because you just cannot hide your truth or your lack of truth or your falsehood from the Almighty Himself. He knows your intentions. You fear God because His knowledge is all embracing. And if you try to make a mess of the situation and try to befool the Prophet and his companions, don't you think that the Almighty is going to let you go scot-free? And He is going to take you to task. So, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu taqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida yuslih lakum a'malakum wa yaghfir lakum dhunubakum. So if you tell the truth, if you speak the truth, the consequences of your deeds would be always go in the right direction. You might think that speaking the truth at times might bear or come with some loss or with some discomfort or with some something which you would not expect that speaking the truth should entail. But remember, as far as the consequences of your deeds are concerned, Almighty is going to set them right. And then not only that, ittaqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida yuslih lakum a'malakum wa yaghfir lakum dhunubakum. He would not only set right the consequences of your deeds, but as a result of speaking the truth, the reward that you're going to actually reap is that He is going to forgive you. Forgiveness is something which is a bonus, which is a reward for speaking the truth. So do not lie, do not make false promises, do not concoct any falsehood against God, because the greatest lie that a person can think of is concocting falsehood against God Almighty Himself. And this is precisely what is termed as polytheism. To speak the truth, to side by the truth, to abide by the truth, and to always be a person who is on the lookout for the truth is what is required here. Because when you speak the truth, the biggest benefit of speaking the truth is that it builds trust amongst the people with whom you are living. They would know that a person who is going to speak the truth, or he has a habit of speaking the truth, he or she can always be trusted. He or she would, whatever the outcome of his or her deeds would be, but they would be absolutely sure to know that this is a person who would not lie for any personal gain, or for that matter, any loss that he or she might suffer. So the biggest benefit of that is that you gain the trust of people. You become a man of integrity. And we know there is no better a praise that can be earned than from one's enemies. So, you know, all of you know this very well, that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, because of this integrity that he had of always speaking the truth, he was called Sadiq and Amin. And by whom? By his enemies, his avowed enemies, his inveterate foes. They were the ones who would call him Sadiq, which means the truthful, and Amin, the trustworthy. that he was a person that, of course, they had severe, they had a lot of complaints against, and they were not willing to tolerate him and his new ideology. But one thing that they always vouched for was his honesty, his truthfulness, and they would even entrust their belongings to him, and they would know that he's a person that you can differ with, but he is not a person that you cannot trust. So this is the reputation which Prophet Muhammad had, and as I said, there is no better praise that can be earned from your. There's no better praise than that which you can earn from your enemies. And this is what Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually, the standard that he set for all of us. And throughout history, I think all of you must have seen so many incidents and read about so many incidents, not only about famous people, but about common people, the common man, people like us who are just observing our lives as common Muslims, as very humble Muslims, that so many times these tales of truthfulness, they come forward and they revive our trust in humanity. And they revive our trust in the fact that, yes, there are still human beings who would speak the truth, come what may, even if it means that their own heads are chopped off, or even if it means that their closest of relatives are going to forsake them. So, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu ittaqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida yuslih lakum a'malakum wa yaghfir lakum zunubakum. And then what the verses go on to say is that وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَقَدْ فَازَ فَوْزًا عَظِيمًا. That remember, those who will continue to obey God and His Messenger are the ones who have attained actually great success. Again, this is in stark contrast with the hypocrites. And I am referring to these hypocrites time and again because we have to understand that Surah Ahzab is a very special surah. And this surah is actually dealing with these hypocrites who had infiltrated in the ranks of Muslims, and they were causing all sorts of stresses and problems, and they were harassing believers in various ways. And on the other hand, the believers are told that you have to be truly and sincerely ones who believe in God. So, وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَقَدْ فَازَ فَوْزًا عَظِيمًا. So in spite of these hypocrites who have taken to deceive Muslims, the right attitude by the Muslims themselves is they have to continue to obey God and to obey the Prophet, which of course was not at all easy in those times, and it entailed that your nearest of kin would become your enemies and you would be put through a lot of persecution. So وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَقَدْ فَازَ فَوْزًا عَظِيمًا. That this, in fact, is supreme success. That if in spite of all adversity, in spite of all enmity, if you still follow God and the Prophet, then in fact you should know that this is what will give you that supreme success. Fawzan azima. These are beautiful words in Arabic, and they actually express this fact that there could be nothing more of greater success than the one which can be attained in following God and His Prophet. Next, it actually the next paragraph is actually once again referring to this fact that when you are speaking the truth and as a result you're following the directives of the Almighty, وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَقَدْ فَازَ فَوْزًا عَظِيمًا. Don't forget that this is something which is coming out of your own volition. It's not that God is imposing this on you. So speaking the truth and of course following Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, following the Almighty, is a willful, deliberate intent that Muslims have. And this intention, the fact of freedom to choose, the freedom to express ourselves, and to freedom to adopt whatever we think is the right path, it historically is presented in the next verse that when mankind was being created, the Almighty actually presented this trust to the heavens and the earth and the mountains, and they were actually offered this very quality, I would say, this trait, that if you would like, the Almighty would give you this blessing of using your own intention and your own free will instead of becoming dormant pieces of matter. But the mountains and in the Jabal, as the Quran says, and in arad al-amanat ala samawati wal ard, the heavens and the earth and the mountains, they were scared, and they said they would never ever take this responsibility. But man himself took upon it that he would take this responsibility, and if he is being offered this responsibility of exercising his will in choosing what is right and wrong, then he would accept. And the reason which is stated here is innahu kana zaluman jahula, that he is a person who is unjust and is also overcome with emotions. He is an ambitious person and who is overcome with emotions. And this is precisely what makes man himself, or human beings themselves, so geared up to take this responsibility. They know that this is going to end up in a lot of zulm, as the Quran says, and this would end up in they being creating a lot of bloodshed on earth. But yes, of course, this also would be a means of creating a lot of benefits for mankind. So human beings, amongst all other creations, they accepted that if they would be given the choice to exercise their free will, yes, they will take upon this responsibility. And when this will happen, of course, there would be this conflict between truth and falsehood that would be carried out on the face of the earth, as the angels had very earlier on predicted when mankind was being created. So this passage ends by expressing the fact that when this happens, that man or human beings would be given this choice to express their freedom, this choice to express their intent, their ikhtiyar, as the Quran says, then this would result ultimately in the fact that the Almighty will bring the unjust to justice, and the just also would be rewarded. So the Quranic words which are mentioned are that the result of this whole scheme would be that لِيُعَذِّبَ اللَّهُ الْمُنَافِقِينَ وَالْمُنَافِقَاتِ وَالْمُشْرِكِينَ وَالْمُشْرِكَاتِ وَيَتُوبَ اللَّهُ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ. That the result would be that God would punish the hypocrites and the idolaters, whether men and women or women, and shower his mercy on believing men and women, because this would be the ultimate result on the day of judgment. And of course, for the immediate adversaries of messengers of God, the same would happen in this world. And the closing attributes of the Almighty mentioned here are وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا, that this day of judgment brought about on the face of this earth, and the greater day of judgment brought about right at the end, is because God is Ghafura Rahima. He is merciful and he is compassionate and he is forgiving, because he is going to take to task people who, in spite of knowing the right path, they chose not to follow it. And on the other hand, he is going to reward those, يَتُوبَ اللَّهُ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, as the verse says, that he will shower his mercy on those who knew that if they would use their intent in the right way and not misuse their freedom of choice, then God will greatly reward them. So this is a challenge, of course, which all of us face every day, to speak the truth, to know that to obey the Prophet and the Almighty is something which is going to cost us a lot at times in our lives. But then remember, the reward is يَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ, that God is going to forgive our deeds. And you have to remember that this is the sole way forward. And of course, this is something which is going to be done out of our own free will. So God has not made us in a manner that he's going to force us to express or do what he thinks is right. So he does not force his opinion on us. He has given us the choice. And in fact, these verses tell us that this choice was given to all the elements of nature at the start of mankind, at the creation of mankind, the mountains, the heavens, and the earth. They were all told that if you would like to come forward and have this power of free will, you will be blessed with it. But they denied, and it was the ambitious and the rather not only ambitious, you would say, but a rather over-ambitious human being, which came forward with this idea that yes, if you bless us with this trust, we will discharge it. And the result of that would be that every single soul on the face of the earth will be brought to account by the Almighty. So with these words, I end my discussion or my explanation of these verses, and now I am available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Very clear explanation with a lot of clarity. As an Al-Mawrid scholar, Dr. Saleem, obviously you spend a lot of time in teaching and training. How much time do you spend on a daily basis actually reading the material, not preparing for the talk, but you're reading for your own sort of ongoing education? How many time do you dedicate? How much hour do you dedicate every day?
Well, actually, this depends on the projects that we are doing. So there was a time that we would be studying a lot of things, like the way when we are in a process of acquiring general education. But once we specialize, so most of our readings are related to the specializations that we have, or each one of us has chosen for ourselves. So my specialization is in Quranic studies, biblical studies, Hadith studies, Islam and militancy, gender issues, women issues, personality development. So some of the areas which I've chosen for my own specialization, maybe, or ones in which I would like to write or express myself, are the ones which take up my time. And so it varies, and it's one of the most enjoyable, I can say, experiences in life, because you think that your inner soul is quenched with the thirst that you had for these subjects that were naturally appealing to you.
How many books do you go through a week? How many new books or books do you read a week?
As I said, this is something which is work driven. I mean, we have a lot of things that we consult. I mean, the stage that we are now in is not the stage in which we read books from cover to cover. That was the time when our education was in its rudimentary, or in its earlier stages. And when you are specializing, or when you're doing certain research projects, the thing is that whatever you have now understood as a result of that training is now put to use. So it's more of consulting things or books related to the particular topic that is under discussion, and at times it would take a lot of hours. But as I said, it's always specialized study relating to the particular area in which that research is being done. So in today's world, it's virtually impossible. I mean, of course, there are two parts of one's life. One is that general reading in which one keeps up with general understanding and general issues which arise. But as a researcher, this is a luxury that at times you can ill afford. As a researcher, it's you're more into reading about the research or the research that you have taken up, because these research topics keep on changing and new ones do emerge. So you at times you have to consult several books. And today what has happened is that libraries have virtually become redundant. And my computer, for example, has a software which has about 17,000 Arabic books which are needed for, at times, from time to consult one or the other. And today, traveling, there was a time in which we would travel with a suitcase of books, but this no longer is needed. So now one single computer having those 17,000 books, which are they keep on updating as well as new books get published. So those reference books are the books that we have to look up every now and then. And I don't keep account of, the number of books that I go through, because this is such a rapid phenomena every day that it involves more of the content than counting the books that you are reading.
I know. I think once you reach a certain stage of seniority in any profession, you don't go back to the actual textbook. You just stick with the journals and the new research that comes out. Anyway, I'm waiting for you to come to UK so I can have my next round of golf with you, as promised. Right, the house is open for questions. Fatima, you can go ahead, please. Ask your first question.
Assalamu alaikum. Yesterday there was a question regarding obedience to parents, and you said that Quran doesn't require children to be obedient to parents. Like, the word of obedience is not used. I want to ask that in relation to husband, like, is obedience is required towards husband? Is the word obedience, used in a wife and husband's relationship?
Again, the word obedience is not used there. It's not say that you have to obey your husband. So the word is فَالصَّالِحَاتُ قَانِتَاتٌ حَافِظَاتٌ. So the word qanita means women who are compliant, with their husbands, who are in harmony with their husbands. In case of any deadlock, if in spite of all discussion, one person has to prevail. I mean, you just cannot have two things going on at the same time. So when after a lot of discussion there is a deadlock, then of course one of the spouses, his opinion has to prevail, because at times arguments are unable to settle a certain issue, because you have the strength of arguments, for example, for a particular issue could be equally strong, or there could be a deadlock even if it is not strong, because one member would say that his argument is strong, and the wife would say that her arguments are strong. So whenever there is a deadlock, then women are required to show this compliance, that the casting vote, and by women, of course, I'm referring to the wives, that because a husband is given this status of the head of the family by virtue of the fact that he is, as the Quran says, temperamentally more suitable in general for this job, and because he has been entrusted with the responsibility of being the financial provider of the family. So he is given this position of the head of the family. So women or the wives are expected that in case of any deadlock, they would be compliant to their husbands. So again, the word here is not obedience, because that carries another connotation of being in a position that you are, I mean, the way you would say that you're obeying God and Almighty, and this is without any ill intent in your heart. But this word is not used actually in Arabic for the husband and wife relationship. So, فَالصَّالِحَاتُ قَانِتَاتٌ, that the pious wives are ones who are compliant, who are in harmony with their husbands. Whenever there is a difference of opinion, if the husband has this prevailing or casting vote, then they accept this as a solution to that deadlock.
But if the husband is like, asking you to do something illegal or something against the Sharia, then you're not required to comply, right?
Right. That's another thing. And you see, here actually, if you study the Quran, you'll find that the compliance here is not regarding the Sharia in any case, because following religion is the responsibility of a person, and it relates to him or her and to his God and to her God. It's between the person and the God himself, compliance with the Sharia. Here it actually means in any difference of opinion, in any cases of deadlock, if the men or the husband's opinion is to prevail, she doesn't end up challenging that and not accepting that, and which the Quran has called nushuz right after these verses. So what needs to be understood is that basically, as far as Sharia is concerned, the husband does not even have the right to impose any of his own understanding of the Sharia on his wife in the first place. She, as an adult, has her own choice to make and please the Almighty in the way in the way she would think is correct. This verse is actually referring to the fact that if, in case of a difference of opinion regarding understanding in any matter, when the deadlock and a deadlock situation prevails, then, I mean, you just cannot let it prevail, because it would cause a lot of problems. I mean, you just cannot go on in a house if at every step you have an issue in which there is a deadlock. So basically, this is like resolving a deadlock, and much like in democracy. In democracy, what happens is you follow the opinion of the majority, but that need not be the correct opinion. I mean, majority is not always right, but there has to be a way out to solve the situation. So it's basically solving a situation. It's not something which is judging someone to be right or wrong. So just as when we say that in a democracy, the opinion of the majority would prevail, you would never say that this would mean that the majority is right. This only means that to settle a discord, to settle a deadlock, this is the way forward. So in a very similar way, when there is this administrative deadlock regarding decisions, and there's nothing going forward in which you are able to resolve it, so one has to prevail. And if the choice made by the husband is allowed to prevail by virtue of the fact that he is the head of the family, then this is the way forward. However, this does not mean that if he is passing or he's giving his verdict in a particular way that is to be followed, then actually it is correct also. So it's like I mean, it's like exactly analogous to the situation in which just as majority cannot always be right, similarly, in a deadlock, it's not that the husband is always right, but the deadlock had to be resolved. I mean, either the woman had to prevail, the wife, or the husband. So the Quran gave this authority neither to the husband nor to the wife, but to the head of the family. So it's not gender specific, it is authority specific. Whoever would have been the head of the family, had women been more suitable to become heads of the family, they would have been given this option. But because of the fact that the Almighty chose that husbands are suitable for this position, so therefore the casting vote, so to speak, in modern terms, was given to them. Again, I would stress this fact that this would not mean that this casting vote actually vouches for the fact that the opinion of the husband is absolutely correct. It's just a means of
So,
resolving a.
yes, that's what I was about to say, that it's just a strategy to resolve a conflict.
Right.
Even if the husband is wrong, you're required to comply with him so that there is no discord in the family setup.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'll take a written question. Someone has just asked, is watching or reading fiction minor shirk? Because sometime while we watch or read fiction, we unintentionally start treating the characters as real people, right? So only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates humans. So is it like we should only treat humans created by Allah as real people? Does this mean that our actions are indirectly indicating that we are giving the right of Allah to the writer of the fiction? Then they summarize their question saying, so basically my question is that, is it just about our action of treating those characters as real people? Does this action indicate we are indirectly ascribing the writer as a partner to Allah?
No, I think this would not be the case. When you're reading fiction or when you are watching movies which have this element in them, or it could be any other real life situation, as long as you know that it is something of a make believe situation, or it is something which is portraying a certain section of the society, obviously it's not something for which you're going to fall for or start believing in. It's like a portrayal of a situation. So this cannot be, if I've understood the question correctly, this cannot be in any way termed as objectionable, I would say.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Akram Bhatti, please go ahead.
Sir, I have a question about itikaf. Can one sit in itikaf at home? A male I'm talking about, because of the corona here in United States still going on. So can somebody do that, or a man has to go to mosque?
Well, itikaf is a worship ritual that is specific to the mosque. However, of course, if there are situations that you've just described because of this pandemic, that it's not wise or it's not medically fit that you do so, then of course, as an exceptional case, you can sit at your house, and this hopefully would be accepted. But in normal circumstances, this is a worship ritual that has to be undertaken in a mosque. But always remember that worship rituals, whenever there is an issue in following them in their letter and spirit, you are always given this concession of following the lesser possible path. For example, if you're sick, again, which is a very legitimate excuse. If you're not able to stand and pray, you can sit. So on very similar terms, if there is a medical situation and it is not advisable by the doctors, so therefore in such circumstances, inshallah, if you sit at home, hopefully it would be accepted as if you had sat in the mosque.
Jazakallah khair, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ji. Adil Qureshi, please fire away.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum, doctor.
Walaikum assalam.
So I have this concern or confusion about the amanat that is given to man, and then Allah Ta'ala also saying that man is basically zulum and juhul. So he does not think that much. He gets excited very easily, and I think in the heat of the moment, he chose to accept this responsibility of choice. that was given to him, and it was such a huge responsibility that even earth and skies and mountains refused to accept that. So there are two sort of confusions in my mind. First of all, what does that really mean, presenting this responsibility or giving the choice to earth and mountains? How would an earth or a mountain obey Allah Almighty like a man is supposed to? A man is given a certain set of rituals, a certain set of guidelines that he needs to follow during his day-to-day life. A mountain or an earth does not live like a person, right? I don't understand what does that really mean. Mountain is just supposed to stay for years and centuries in a place and then just gets destroyed when the earth is going to destroy. So what does Allah mean when He says that I presented this choice to even mountains and they refused to accept it? And secondly, if that is the case, that man only accepted it in the heat of the moment, he did not really give it thought this through. How can he be then questioned on the day of judgment for that responsibility?
Okay, I'll answer your second question first. This is, I think, an incorrect understanding to say that he accepted it in the heat of the moment. What the Quran says is that what made him accept his responsibility was his trait of being ambitious and overly indulgent in things. So it's not that the decision was made as a result of that. It is because he accepted this. And accepting this was something which he accepted, of course, as a result of the fact that he knew that this would entail a lot of problems as well. But the trait which made him accept was that ambitious nature that he had. So that ambitious nature is being referred to, not the fact that it was accepted in the heat of the moment. And the other thing that is so important, and I think I'm glad that you raised this question, is a whole different philosophy, or I would say a new piece of information which very few people reflect, and that is that at the time of creation, it does seem that everyone was presented with this trust of free intention to be given to them, as if they were living beings. So the Quran actually makes this point that every single object of this world has some cognizance, like matter. For example, to us, which is dead matter, like a piece of wood or a piece of rock or something that we think is lifeless. This is not what verdict of the Quran is. The Quran says that each one of these objects, whatever you can call them, they do tasbih of the Almighty, although you are not able to know how they express their praise and extol the Almighty. And at the beginning of mankind, at the beginning of creation, all these forms of matter were presented with this same option. If you would like yourselves to be entities who would have intent, who would have the ability to move forward because of their ambition. So this was something which was an option given to everyone. And mankind or humankind accepted this responsibility out of their own free will. And the rest said that this is something beyond them. So they have a certain degree, they had a certain degree of cognizance and comprehension at the time of creation. Now, this is a very amazing concept, which at the moment science has not come to grips to, because we just cannot think that a piece of wood or a rock or anything which is solid has some degree of awareness or cognizance. The Quran has this these verses which tell us that at the time of creation, this was the case, that every single matter, every single type of matter, I would say, was given this option, and it was of course, it was their will which made them accept or reject, which tells us that they had a certain amount of will. And secondly, as you can see, there are, which I just referred to earlier on, that there are verses in the Quran which tell us that every single object of this universe glorifies the Almighty. But we are not in a position to understand the way they glorify the Almighty. What tongue do they use, or what is the mode of expressing their glorification of the Almighty? So, on the one hand, we have life forms like the jinn, the angels, human beings who perhaps are the highest life forms. Then we have the animal kingdom. Then we have the plant kingdom. All these three kingdoms, or you can say three categories of matter, they have some sort of cognizance which is even recognized by science. Even plants have been recognized to have that a certain amount of consciousness. But what science at the moment has, not come to any understanding is the fact that what the Quran tells us, that lifeless things which to us appear lifeless, they also have a certain amount of, awareness, so to speak. It might be at the lowest ladder, but when at the start of creation, had they accepted this challenge the way mankind had, we would have a very different structure of the universe. But because of the fact that they did not accept that, they settled themselves to be at the lowest rung of that creation ladder, so to speak, but they still have a certain amount of awareness. And that is why we find the Quran also telling us that these things are going to bear witness on the day of judgment regarding the things that we did before them. So this is something of a very amazing, a very novel, a very revolutionary understanding of inanimate matter, which I think science has yet to identify, and maybe it has even given up on these things, but the Quran has a very different view. And I think this is one area in which all of us need to study the Quran regarding those verses in which these inanimate objects or lifeless objects, so to speak, are not treated lifeless by the Quran.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Shehzad Ahmed, please go ahead.
So regarding Surah Nisa, chapter 4, verse 34, if I heard you correctly, you said that you gave, at least I got the impression that you're saying that males are more suited to head the family, right, as per Quran. But if I recall the verse correctly, that's not what the Quran is saying. Please correct me. My current understanding is that the only reason Quran at that time, or for all periods of time, I don't know, you can comment better, made males the head of the family in the role of a husband is because they are responsible for financially supporting the family till the end of their lives. Even if the husband and wife get divorced, the father is still responsible for supporting the children, right? That's not an excuse. And that's why he's been made the head of the family. If we look around us, the nature that Allah has developed, many of the animals in the animal kingdom, right, and even many of the human societies, they are what I think the English word, if I'm not pronouncing it incorrectly, is matriarchal, right? Matriarch based. The females are the head of the family or the clan. So my understanding is this, that if we come across a family in which the male, for the lack of any better word, is not doing anything, and the female goes out there, she's a well-educated woman, she earns money, she supports the family, everything and all that, right? Then she is performing all the roles that the Quran has asked a husband to do. And then this, with more responsibility comes more authority. Then this pattern will change. Is this understanding correct? Or even if the husband is sitting idle at home, not doing anything, right? The balance would remain the same. And one last comment I would like to have from you is that it's because of this sole role that the husband takes a vow to support the wife and the children, how many children, or if Allah is going to give them many children, till the end of his life, right? By his own money, by his own wealth. It's because of this role, not because of any intellectual superiority of the male. That's what my understanding of the verse, but I'm a layman, sir. Please guide me. Thank you.
So if you study this 34th verse of Surah Nisa, you'll find out that there are two reasons which are given, which make husbands, given this, invested with this authority of being the head of the family. It's not just the fact that they are going to earn for the family. That is just one reason. So the verse is, "Ar-rijalu qawwamuna 'ala an-nisa," that husbands have been made responsible for women. This is an exact translation, but a more idiomatic translation would be that husbands have been made the head of the families. Why? Bima faddalallahu ba'dahum ala ba'd wa bima anfaqu min amwalihim. So there are two things. The first is bima faddalallahu ba'dahum ala ba'd, because one is given more superiority in certain respects. This is the first reason. And the second is وَبِمَا أَنْفَقُوا مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ, because they spend their wealth to maintain their family. So, as I said, this is the word of the Quran, and the Quran tells us that this responsibility is not just given because they are earning for the family, but, as I said, بِمَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ, that in certain areas, and of course here the references to being the head of the family, they are more suitable temperamentally, physically, physiologically, psychologically, to be in this position. And again, when the Quran speaks of this, we have to understand that it is speaking in general terms. There are always exceptions in which women are more dominating, or I mean they are virtually taking the same vein. They behave in the same vein as husbands. And let's leave that exception and discuss it elsewhere or maybe later. But a simple reading that I would like you to reconsider and revisit the Quran is that it's not just earning for the family which makes the husband suitable for this. The reason which is actually stated first is a different one, and that is he is more suitable, more likely to discharge that role in a better way. So the bima faddalallahu ba'dahum ala ba'd wa bima anfaqu min amwalihim. So this is the reason.
Sorry, just to save time, a follow-up question regarding what you just said, right? So, faddallahu ba'dahum ala ba'd. Quran uses this exact same terminology, if I'm not wrong, when Quran is comparing prophets, right? So, can this verse be understood in this way? That because when Allah says that Allah has given fazilah to certain prophets over other prophets, it's not in their title of prophethood. For example, if Moses parted the sea, it has nothing to do with Moses. He didn't have any magical, potion to get it done. Or if Jesus, may Allah be pleased with him, raise up the dead, people from the dead, right? He made them alive. Jesus didn't have any superpower to get it done. Allah made it happen through them, and that's why it's their fazilat in front of us. Now, in this particular context, when we say 434, Allah is choosing males at the head of the family, right? So Allah is giving them fazilat. He has made the decision because of what? Because of the reason mentioned afterwards. So can we see that Allah has given preference to one over the other, husband over the wife? This is the word Fadlullah saying, and that reason is now explicitly mentioned that why he has done that. Can we read it in this way? That would be wrong reading of Arabic. Just ask.
I think that would be incorrect as far as the Arabic is concerned. You see, in wow, the way the wow is called the particle of copulation. This is the technical term. This is a particle of copulation, and when it is placed like the way it has been placed here, it is called that it is wow lil mughayara, which means that it is describing two separate instances, and it's not that the first instance is being cited as a principle and the second one is its application. So it's like telling us that the reason that it has happened is this plus this and this, not this and as a result of this. So and to my understanding, there is not a single exegete of the Quran ever since the interpretation of the Quran that we have before us who has ever interpreted in this way. Because as I said, not only grammatically, but also the way the rest of the verse, or the verse which succeeds is structured, it gives us this conclusion that we can draw that there are two distinct things which are being mentioned. That one of the reasons is that he is more suitable for this, and the Quran has made it vague actually that what type of suitability is. This vagueness again carries a lot of eloquence because it actually tells us that the husband is superior or maybe more suitable to be the head of the family, but there are several other instances in which women are more superior to their husbands in affairs, for example, being more emotionally stable, or for example, being more patient. So what is expressed here, bima faddalallahu ba'dahum ala ba'd, is a very eloquent clause. It doesn't say that they have absolute superiority. What it says is because one has been given superiority over the other, referring to the fact that in this case, the superiority belongs to the husband, but there are several other cases or several other areas in which the wife has more superiority vis-a-vis running a family, vis-a-vis maybe educating the kids. So, of course, these are things that can always be deduced. So the first expression is not explicit the way the second one is. I mean, there is no difference in opinion that when you say وَبِمَا أَنْفَقُوا مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ, the translation would be that because they spend for the welfare for the family. This explicit style is not adopted in the first part. Otherwise, it should have been that the word should have been something to the effect that that husbands have been made head of the family because they are more suitable. So the word would have been such that bima faddalallahu ba'dahum ala ba'd would have been replaced with more explicit words the way they are for the second clause. Precisely for this reason, that because of the fact that the husband and wife relationship, as far as the head of the family is concerned, this is something in which a husband might be more suitable. But the Quran has not said that. It has said, yes, he might be more suitable for this job, but there are several other instances or areas or affairs in which this superiority would belong to the wife. And so therefore I think that as far as the grammatical and the balagha aspect of this verse is concerned, it is actually talking about these two different things, that men temperamentally, physically, physiologically, in general, of course there are exceptions, are more suited to be the heads of the family. Women are more suited or more superior to men in some other instances, which is also implied here. But as far as being the head of the family is concerned, husbands are more suitable for this. And the second reason is that they spend for the family. So this is my understanding.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shehzad. Jazakallah.
Thank you. Thank you, Shiraz. Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Najia, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad. Thank you for a wonderful session. And I always struggle with economizing on my words, but I'll try to keep this succinct. If you define the attribute qanitat for women in relation to the equilibrium in spousal relation, you've defined it just now as a person who would comply in a conflict. Now, which conflict are we talking about now? Is it only about what shall be cooked today, or where shall we go for a vacation, or what color of the curtain shall we choose? You know, more often than not, there are graver, more significant life-altering situations that these discords are about. For instance, I'm sorry, I'll be taking some personal examples from my life. From my immediate circle of friends, from my childhood and academic life, these discords have been about choice of taking a career. Even they were postgraduate position holder, doctor, engineer, you know, even civil service serving women, and even for their rights to contraception if they wanted or did not want more children. Or so these women either had to comply you know, to their better halves, or they had to quit. So if they quit, I would like to refer to a comment made by my dear brother Shiraz here, that a man is, you know, has been asked by the Quran or has been asked by the Sharia that he has to take care. I'm sorry, a mere look at the statistics by the civil courts of Pakistan will tell you that how many cases have been pending. Women do not go for even the court. They are so high-headed, and alhamdulillah, I would say that they would do multiple jobs, but they would not go back to their husband to ask for money for their own children. They do multiple jobs, and there's many women in my own circle who are doing that. And if they ask their husband because they want to teach their wives a lesson because they did not choose to comply, but they wanted to call it quits because they wanted some sanity for their own selves, they wanted to guard their physical boundary and mental boundary and spiritual boundary. So this is not happening when we talk about lived realities, lived conditions, because now we are getting education in the postmodernist culture where we are talking about lived conditions, and hence the laws are being made, egalitarian societies are being talked about, even religion is being understood, and it's a need of the hour. If we do not want our young girls, our young boys to, be deviated from the path, and if we really want them to look to the Quran for guidance, even about their spousal relations, we will need to draw a line till when we keep on asking women to go for the harmony of the household, for the family structure, and for compromise on their own personhood, their own intellect, their own, because if insan was created a naib, a woman was, right? Insan is a man and a woman, a creation which is, held responsible to take on the world as a naib of Allah. It's a man and a woman both. So we are actually denying that the other half of humanity is incapable, and we are not, because these days I'm in my group, we are studying Fatma Marnisi's Whale and the Male Elite, and it's an eye-opener, and then mashallah that you've just discussed that inventory of books that you have. I would really recommend, I would really beseech you to look into the work of Asma Barlas, Amna Wadud, Kisha Ali, Fatma Marnisi, and Aisha Ali, and because we really need to, because your followers are a lot of women like me who look up to Al-Mawrid for a lot of to overcome our cognitive dissonance, because I've always said that I have a privileged life. I have a very good life, a very progressive father and an equally progressive husband. But it's not happening in my own sphere, my friends, my childhood friends, my neighborhood friends, my workplace friends. So it really puts me ill at ease when I see the women making compromises on their physical well-being and their mental well-being. And if a woman is asked to comply, even if the husband is wrong, what kind of effect are we having on the offspring? What kind of unhealthy household are we going to raise, where a woman, even if she had enough potential, is complying with a husband which is beneath the level of intellect, but still to keep the decorum of the house? What kind of leaders, Muslim leaders for tomorrow are we producing? So it's not a simplistic and reductionist approach that we are looking at. It's a complex problem. And from this platform, I would really, again, I'll use the word beseech you to look at it from the reality, from the lived reality of women of Pakistan and a majority of Muslim areas. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to respond to this by first of all saying that there are actually 3 or 4 major misconceptions which have resulted in this understanding. And the foundational misconception is that there are certain areas in which men have, and when I talk about men, I talk about husbands, they have absolutely no right to have a casting vote, even if there is a difference of opinion. For example, if she wants to adopt a profession, it's her choice. If she has a particular worldview regarding religion or social issues or economic issues, the husband cannot impose or have any say in that. If she doesn't want a child, or if she wants a child and the husband doesn't want a child, again, this is an issue which relates to both. So the husband cannot force her to have a child. This is something which comes through the mutual consent of both. So if you put things in order, you'll realize that ultimately this difference of opinion boils down to some administrative decisions in which there is, hardly anything that you can make sense of in moving forward. But as far as the intellectual independence of women is concerned, their religious independence is concerned, their social independence is concerned, this is something that even their worship independence is concerned, this is something in which husbands have no right to interfere in. And it would be even more better if these things are discussed before even entering into the bond of marriage. That 1, a woman is going to pursue a professional career, 2, that she might have a particular approach towards rearing children or the number of children, 3, that she would like to continue in such a manner or live in such a place. You see, these are the things which Islam encourages, that before you enter into the marriage contract, these are some of the major things that are going to cause a conflict later on. So have a good discussion so that both spouses or future spouses know that this is how things are going to work. So, as I said, most of your concerns that I've just heard, they have arisen because today men think that these are the areas in which they can subjugate women, or they can interfere with, or they can impose their opinion. So I'm not referring to any sort of deadlock in any of these areas. If a woman wants to pursue a career, if she doesn't want to produce a child, or produce a child, if she wants to have anything which she would like for herself, I go as far as to say the type of dress that she would like to wear, the type of house that she would like to live, all these things which make a person independent. In all these things, she has a say. She can have a say, and it's only in certain administrative matters in which there is someone who has to have a casting vote, and in those administrative matters, I can tell you that none of them relate to any sort of religious, intellectual, or social independence of women. I'm not sure if I've been...
I'm sorry, but what I always struggle with this, what kind of administrative issues are they?
The example that I gave was that there was a decision that they have to make regarding sending their children to certain schools. So the mother was insisting on a certain type of schools, and the father was insisting that no, this is not the right way. If you expose them to this type of education, they might become westernized, or they might lose their own culture. So instead of this very advanced school system, this is another school system which would be more conservative, and at the same time, it is more value-based. So I'm talking about these types of decisions in which at times, I mean, the wife is also right, the husband is also right, because there are certain pros in her approach, and there are certain other pros in the approach of the husband. But you cannot send the children to two schools at the same time. So this is an administrative decision which might affect the life of the children. And what is the reason? I mean, how would you go and resolve it? Obviously, before this final vote or this casting vote is even made, a proper way out, which has been suggested by religion, is that you debate, you discuss, you try to say that, well, this is more congenial, this is more convenient, this is more fruitful for their future. So you have all those discussions, and everything is there. I would say there's an exhaustive discussion that has taken place. But at the end of the day, the wife and the husband, they still think that, well, this is the school that the children is going to go to, and he says that this is a school that the children should go to. Now, how would you suggest this should move forward? Because if both are adamant, I mean, there could have been one instance in which at times either the husband or the wife thinking that, well, the wife is wrong or the husband is wrong, you say, okay, I'll just compromise. When it is, what the hell, why should we go to such lengths? Let's not just indulge in this endless debate. Okay, I'll just forget about it, in spite of the fact that I think I'm on the right. Either of them can say this. But what if both of them are equally adamant and both of them say, well, this is an area in which I just cannot compromise? Now what should you do? So I think this is an example, and this is a living example actually, which I came across from my friend. So you can see this is an administrative area which relates to a deadlock situation in which both are adamant, both are not willing to give up, and one had to prevail. Even if that one person, the husband, of course, who would be prevailing, was taking a wrong decision, and it would actually be ill affecting the life of their children.
Long debate again, but I would say that if both of them have worked on their harmony even before producing their children, because I belong to that school of thought that people should come together, should have some mental compatibility before they think about procreating. So if they first work on their relationship and they make their house, house rules, only then for future discord. Yes.
Absolutely. This is what should happen. But you see, there are instances in which, in spite of having worked out this beforehand, there could be untoward situations which could arise in which, I mean, there is a deadlock and both are not willing to give up that deadlock, and they're not willing to compromise. So
will they open the book of Allah? Does it happen that do they open Allah's book and
what we would expect of them is they are reasonable people, and as reasonable people, instead of becoming egoistic, instead of making their own ego to be the decisive factor, they will make reasoning to be the decisive factor. This is what is expected. But you see, this doesn't always happen. People become egoistic, people become arrogant, people become vindictive, and because of wrong decisions, one general is responsible for the killing of millions of soldiers, so to speak. I'm not giving an exact analogy, but telling you that at times the wrong decision could lead to a disaster. But then this is how this world has been made. Remember, we are not living in a perfect world. We are living in conditions in which we are trying to establish a workable system in which things can move on. And we just cannot think that everyone is going to think logically and positively, because human beings are not made such. They come from different backgrounds. In spite of being very educated, I mean, they could be PhDs, they could be very, very learned people. But when it comes to taking such decisions, they behave as ignorant people and totally. You just cannot even use words for them. This is how we are. This is the scheme of God, and we have to live in this scheme and try to make the best out of it.
We have one brief written question, and then we'll inshallah call it a day. So the written question is, it's a brief question, Dr. Saleem. How many minutes before Maghrib we can offer Asr prayers? Because it's said that before 20 minutes Zawal starts and prayers are prohibited. So the question is, how many minutes before Maghrib we can offer Asr?
Okay, first of all, there is no such thing as Zawal. Zawal itself is a concept which is not related to, in the first place, to Maghrib. it is related to the descent of the sun from midday, which is around about between 11 a.m. and 12:30 p.m., depending upon the season, which is winters or summers. But as far as Zawal is concerned, this is an erroneous misconception in the first place, that even in the time of Zawal, which is not, of course, at Maghrib, it is much before that, it is night, this time for Zohar. There is no such thing as prohibition at the time of Zawal. The only time for prohibition is sunrise and sunset. So first, I think this misconception should be set right. There is no concept of Zawal. In the first place, Zawal is not equivalent to sunset. It is equivalent to midday. And you can offer the prayers at midday. Now, as far as I think the question perhaps that might be asked is that how much before sunset can we pray? So it's like a rough call that we make. And generally, it's like we say that 3 or 4 minutes or a couple of minutes before sundown and sunrise is the time in which you should offer the prayer. And you should not offer the prayer, because this would be the time when the sun would be just either setting or rising. So, for example, at times, and you must have heard of this famous opinion of Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, and he expressed it and said that if you have enough time to offer one rakat, such that rakat is either before sunrise or just after sunset, whatever the two cases may be, if that is enough time that you have, which is of course like a couple of minutes, then that is fine. So there is no hard and fast rule here. What you need to make sure is that you're not praying right at the time of sunrise and sunset. And by the way, you must also know this, that there are 7 minutes and 30 or 29 seconds for the sunlight to reach the earth. So the calculation has to be done keeping in view this mind that the time for the rays of the sun to reach earth is 7 minutes and 29 seconds, as science has told us. So of course this would mean that is time that we should compensate as well, because if we are praying 7 minutes earlier or after that, we are not, praying right at time, because light is in the process of coming to us. So given this due importance, our charts, I think, already accommodate this. So I would give this opinion that if you have those charts of sunrise and sunset, it would be sufficient if a couple of minutes before sunset and a couple of minutes before sunrise, if you're sure that you will offer the first rakat of your prayer, then of course that is something that you can do.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem, for taking all our questions very, very patiently. I know it's not always easier to delve into such diverse topic of the back of your mind all the time. But thank you all participants. Inshallah, we'll see you tomorrow.
Inshallah.